Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dan Fan Channel. We're reviewing another manga today. Romance manga of the day is I'll Win You Over, Senpai. I do have to do a disclaimer because this is not a very steamy manga. Sorry guys, this is pretty milquetoast as far as steaminess goes. I will say I had some trouble deciding whether or not I was actually going to give this manga a review because it's kind of a weird one for me. Not in the sense that the story itself is weird, but I kind of had a mixed feeling about it. And I wasn't really sure if it would actually be a manga that I would recommend to people. It's one of those manga series that has a really strong opening, but then it just gets a little bit weird as it trails along. And it is one that I haven't really finished, but I did get to the second to last volume. And then after that, I just didn't read the very last one. So I don't have a complete image, but I have an overall idea of what the series looks like. So without further ado, let's get into the story. So our main female protagonist is a girl who has been told by her mother that a good woman would never be turned down by a man. And she takes these words to heart to mean that if a guy ever turns her down, she's not a good woman. But her friends tell her that because she lives by the saying, she specifically will only ask a guy out if she already knows that he won't turn her down. And because she's so scared of rejection, it's actually prevented her from taking a risk in asking guys out. So in order to prove something to her friends, she decides that she's going to ask the one guy in the school who always turns down girls, and she wants to prove that for sure he will not turn her down because she is a good woman. And sure enough, he turns her down before she can even finish saying her confession. But after this exchange, she refuses to give up and then decides that she will keep on confessing him until he eventually says yes, and that way she can say that she still was not technically turned down if eventually he came around to her. Hence the title of the manga, I'll Win You Over, Senpai. It's a very cute idea for a manga series. I always like those main characters with go-get-em attitudes. Obviously, at first she's just doing it to prove a point, but as it goes on further, she realizes that she actually does have feelings for this guy the more that she gets to know him. And she realizes that she can't just give up because now that she actually likes him, she's willing to keep on confessing to him no matter how many times he rejects her. And thus the moral being that she learns to get over her fear of rejection because he rejects her every single time. But even more so, the guy is not a completely 2D character himself. He actually has a reason why he keeps on rejecting all these girls who confess to him. And of course, it's because of a broken heart. The typical case of unrequited love. But his is a little bit more spicy than the normal unrequited love. But the girl that he liked, he never confessed to himself because she was his brother's wife? Oh no! And where we are in the story now, she's actually having a baby. So he thinks it's absolutely pointless confessing to her. I know she won't say yes, and I don't really want her to say yes, because I don't want to break up a happy family. But I still can't help having these feelings for her, so I don't have any room in my heart for somebody else. And that's why I keep on rejecting all these other girls. It's because he's going through his own shit right now, basically. And this is how the manga opens. It's a very strong opening and it establishes a lot immediately. You already know that both of these characters have some developing to do and you are excited to see how that turns out later on down the series. And it is really funny seeing all the creative ways that our main character confesses to him, and it's nice to see them slowly establishing a connection to each other. But I do have to say there are a lot of drama things that writers will add into a story just to kind of make it longer or to keep an audience's interest, and sometimes the drama isn't necessary. And I'm sure you know from my other manga reviews that sometimes, yes, even in manga, the mangaka will just kind of want to shove some ideology down somebody's throat, like out of nowhere. Like I mentioned before in my Peach Mermaid review, like all of the sudden, sexuality is a choice is just like shoved in there. Everyone should be bisexual. I don't know where it came from. I didn't want that there. I think there are a lot of slice of life mangas out there that wish they were Fruits Basket. Fruits Basket was known for having a lot of, you know, positive moral lessons in there. And of course, Fruits Basket also had some controversial messages in there, some hot takes. But I can understand people thinking, oh, I'm gonna make a slice of life manga and I'm gonna put my own lessons in there. So all of a sudden you'll just get like some moral lesson that is obviously very personal to the author and not necessarily objective. Let me just refresh you here for the context of the story. She is going after him despite him constantly rejecting her. Despite the fact he has no love for her, she refuses to give up on him. That is the plot. Alright, so let me tell you the side plot. She has a friend who she used to date, and I assume that he's one of the people that she dated because she knew he was safe, he would never reject her type thing. But she never really had any feelings for him, and because of that they ended up breaking up, and they still stayed friends. And she kind of thinks back on that dating experience as like being invalid. Like that doesn't even count as us dating. We're just friends. We're always going to be just friends. That was just nothing. He doesn't feel that way though. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, he still is in love with her, and he only stayed friends to stay closer to her in hope that they could refigure things out and get back together. So he's still doing things for her, things that could be classified as kind of boyfriend things for her, and she accepts him doing these things for her without wanting to date him. Basically, he is a simp. He's simping for her very hard. But keep in mind that she is also simping for this other character. So in a way, you could say they are one and the same. Now you think that the fact that her friend character goes after her again and she rejects him, maybe that would open her eyes to realizing that she is doing the same to this character. Maybe that would make her more self-aware, and maybe it would even separate herself and finally accept his rejection, making it so that this character has to go after her and the role can be reversed. And you see, that would be a good drama to introduce. That would be a good conflict, a good change of pace. That's not what happens. So the friend character meets up with her one day, and he explains to her that it's painful for him to see her going after this other guy when he's been trying to get back together with her all this time. So he basically tells her, I'm not gonna simp for you anymore. If he's gonna be hanging out with her, giving her gifts, and carrying her books around school, stuff like that, he wants to be her boyfriend. He wants it to be official. He's like, I'm not just gonna be your simp that you can just have on a hook. So if she doesn't agree to be boyfriend-girlfriend with her friend, then he's not going to be friends with her. He's gonna cut ties with her, which is understandable, honestly. I don't think that men should simp for a woman, especially for how long that he's been simping for the main character. He shouldn't get so caught up on her, and he shouldn't really tag along her hoping to repair what was never there. And if cutting his ties with her is how he can finally get over her, he should do it. So I don't really think what he's requesting is necessarily bad, but the author sure does. Now, I will say this, of course it's sad whenever like you're friends with someone and you find out that they have feelings for you, and if you don't have feelings for them back, that means that you can't be friends anymore. But I feel like it's a little bit judgmental to just pass those types of people off as bad people because it's painful for them to be around you if they love you and you don't love them back. Even more so, hypocritical for this girl to be going after this other guy who doesn't love her, to then tell this guy going after her to get over it because she doesn't love him. It's okay when I do it to somebody else, but it's not okay when someone else does it to me. Like I said, it's just tone deaf. I don't think the author thought it through. The story is literally about somebody chasing someone who doesn't love them. If you were then going to add a side story about someone chasing the main character who doesn't love them, then at least be self-aware of your own plot. If you're going to try to pull that on us, then at least have her be self-aware that she herself is a simp. But no, he's a bad guy. He's bad. It does make me think that there's some kind of personal reason why the author feels this way and felt the need to shove it in a book that it doesn't belong in. Like, maybe they personally had an experience with someone who they rejected and then they ghosted them, and they might have been sad that this person ghosted them, and then over the years they might have been more angry that the person ghosted them and tried to instead imagine that that person was a bad person to begin with and I'm better off without them. And I realized that a lot of people might have a lot of different opinions on the matter. Just because it's not painful for us doesn't mean that it's not painful for them. Just because, like, we can laugh it off like, haha, remember when you confessed your love for me and I totally rejected you into the ground? That was hilarious. That doesn't mean that they're gonna feel the same way. Furthermore, it doesn't mean that they're just going to poof, not have those feelings anymore after you rejected them. And people have their own ways of dealing with those feelings and finding a way to get over it, finding a way to overcome it. And sometimes the way that people deal with that pain, the way that they overcome it, is they cut themselves off from the source. You know, they take a break, they take a breather, and maybe when they're over you, maybe when they actually feel as though it's not painful to be around you anymore, they'll come back and, you know, maybe they'll have a new person under their arm after that. I'm not saying it's not sad, but you have to be a little bit more reasonable than just assuming that they're bad people. It's just black and white, bad people. How dare they leave me? That's really inconvenient for me, for you to do that. I had to take a break from the manga after reading that because that was painful for me to read. But I did manage to pick the manga back up and read up till their confession. And of course that guy gets brought up again, even during their confession moment. And I don't really mind how they get together, but I will say it's a little bit unsatisfying. Given that we're having all this build up to her confessing to him a million times, for him to actually say yes to her finally, I was expecting it to be maybe more impactful. I was, maybe like change their dynamic after that. But instead, when they do get together, when they're officially dating, he still looks at her like, well, I don't really know if I like you that way. Like, I don't really know if I actually love you, but I'm willing to date you now. Even when they're together, he's still rejecting her. That was the point where I stopped reading. After that, I was just like, fuck this series. It's like you hooked me in for so long. When I see two characters with a built-up romance finally get together, I want some form of satisfaction. I want to see them be cute. If you can't even commit to that, I mean, has this person been in a relationship before? Have they only rejected people who then ghosted them and never actually got with anybody? There are a lot of manga writers out there who have never been in relationships before and actually have trouble writing characters in a relationship, so that they just straight up avoid writing characters in a relationship. They only write the build-up and then never actually have the characters get together. I know tons of manga series like that, and I hate it. But I don't know, man. I would have been willing to keep reading to see if it does get better, if they do get cute, and I'm sure that eventually they start being cute with each other. Eventually they start acting like a couple. I can only assume. I mean, there's one more volume left to go. Like I said, it has such a strong opening, but the further you get into it, the more questionable decisions there are on the writer's part, and it kind of threw me off, to say the least. Turned me off, to say the most. So that is my review of I'll Win You Over, Senpai. Have you personally read this romance manga? And if you have, tell me, what do you think of it? Are you interested in the plot and the premise? Are you interested in checking it out for yourself and seeing if you would enjoy it? Well, don't worry, there is a link in the description. And you know what else there is a link to in the description? Stone Clean Soap at stonecleansoap.com, discount code DanFan. You see, everyone knows that manga fans and Stone Clean Soap are like this. And with Valentine's Day coming up, well, you better get your significant other some stone clean soap. It is practical, and if you have no idea what your significant other likes, stone clean soap is the way to go. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time. Bye! Program restart.